My mom bought a $500,000 life insurance policy on my infant sister, 18 months before she passed. When my sister drowned, my mom adopted a girl her age and started calling her by my sister's name. Lily had passed away 6 weeks ago. She had Down syndrome and was playing in the pool, and mom told us she would watch her. One minute, I was upstairs playing Twister with my friends. The next, we were all gathered by the deck, watching my mom screaming and blowing air into Lily's mouth, trying to revive her. After Lily's funeral, mom barely spoke. She sat silently in Lily's untouched room, ignoring everyone. Dad tried coaxing her out gently, offering meals she barely ate. Then suddenly, as if a switch had flipped, she became manic and determined, speaking rapidly about adoption like she'd found some miracle cure. Emma arrived quickly, through an emergency fostering program mom had found. She was sweet and wide-eyed, barely 2 years old, looking nothing like Lily except for age. But mom instantly dressed her in Lily's clothes, gave her Lily's toys, and even started accidentally calling her Lily. What hurt most was how quickly mom erased Lily entirely. She banned us from talking about her, shutting down every attempt I made to visit Lily's grave. Stop living in the past, she snapped whenever I mentioned my sister's name. But Emma wasn't Lily. Mom seemed relieved by that. She bragged constantly to family about Emma's quick learning and development, highlighting how easily she did things Lily never could. She showered Emma with praise and expensive toys, yet ignored everything I needed. She forgot my soccer games, skipped parent-teacher meetings, and brushed off my requests for help or attention. I started building model airplanes to cope, something Lily always loved watching. I even won a competition at school, but mom barely acknowledged it. Dad noticed, offering awkward encouragement, but we both felt powerless to confront mom's fragile mental state. As Lily's first death anniversary approached, I suggested a small memorial at Lily's grave, but mom said no. She had already booked a photographer on that exact day, telling me these would be our first professional photos with Emma. But what about Lil? There'll be plenty of anniversaries, she interrupted. That broke something in me. You're pretending Lily never existed. You can't just replace her. Mom slapped me when I said that, eyes wild and angry. Lily was suffering. Emma is everything Lily couldn't be. Dad stood frozen, eyes wide. Without another word, I ran to my room, slamming the door behind me. Hours later, Dad knocked and sat beside me. He looked drained. Something's wrong with your mother, he whispered. I've ignored it too long. We talked honestly about mom's behavior, and we agreed Emma deserved better, not to be a replacement for a lost child. For the first time, Dad openly mentioned divorce and custody battles. I felt guilty, but also relief. We weren't pretending anymore. When family arrived days later for the photo shoot mom planned, Dad and I were ready. Everyone stood awkwardly in our living room as the photographer set up. My chest tightened. Before mom could pose Emma in another one of Lily's dresses, I spoke up. Mom has erased Lily, I said clearly. Emma deserves better. She's not Lily's replacement. Mom's face turned white, then red with anger. Don't ruin this, she hissed. Dad stepped forward protectively as family began murmuring. You called Lily broken, I said aloud, my voice shaking with suppressed grief. You pretend she never existed and treat Emma like some perfect doll. My aunt gasped quietly. My uncle stared at mom with disbelief. Mom's voice rose to a scream, her anger overtaking everything. Emma is what Lily wasn't, she shouted. Lily was an embarrassment. The room fell silent. The photographer looked at us like, what the heck is going on? My aunt took Emma into her arms, comforting the now scared toddler. Quietly, family members left, shaken and disgusted. Several called child services on the spot. The photographer asked my mom if this meant no photos, and she screamed at him to get out. In the following weeks, Emma was temporarily placed with my aunt. My mom packed her bags and left the night Emma was taken away. Dad and I started therapy, grieving Lily openly for the first time. Months later, after careful evaluation, Emma returned to us. Dad legally adopted her, and we slowly rebuilt something resembling a family. We thought everything was finally behind us. But then months later, Dad and I finally felt ready to clear mom's belongings from storage. And among her papers, hidden behind old files, I found a manila envelope. Inside, there was a life insurance policy on Lily, worth $500,000, dated 18 months before her death. My hands shook as I stared at the document. The policy details blurred as my eyes filled with tears. I couldn't process what I was seeing. Dad was in the other room sorting through boxes of Christmas decorations. I walked over to him slowly, the papers trembling in my grip. He looked up and saw my face. I handed him the envelope without saying anything. He read it once, then again. His face went pale, the color draining so fast I thought he might faint. We sat there in silence for what felt like hours but was probably just minutes. The storage unit's fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Finally he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. He said we needed to look through everything more carefully. We spent the next 3 hours going through every single paper in those boxes. We found 2 more policies, one on me, one on Dad, all taken out around the same time, all for substantial amounts. My stomach churned. Dad's hands were steady, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his teeth clenched. We didn't talk much on the drive home. Emma was with my aunt for the weekend, having a sleepover with her cousins. The house felt too quiet. Dad made coffee even though it was late. We sat at the kitchen table with all the documents spread out. He kept running his hand through his hair, a nervous habit I'd never really noticed before. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence. I asked him what we should do. He said he didn't know. We both knew what those papers suggested, but neither of us wanted to say it out loud. The coffee got cold. We stayed up until 3 in the morning just sitting there, trying to make sense of it all. Outside, a storm rolled in, rain pattering against the windows like fingers tapping. The next day, Dad called a lawyer friend. Not for legal advice, he said, just to understand insurance policies better. I listened from the hallway as he spoke in careful, measured tones. When he hung up, he looked older somehow. He told me these kinds of policies weren't unusual, but the timing and amounts raised questions. Serious questions. We decided not to tell anyone yet, not until we understood more. Dad started quietly gathering financial records from his home office. I helped when I could. We found credit card statements showing mom had been in debt before Lily died. Significant debt. After Lily's death, everything was paid off. The papers painted a picture neither of us wanted to see. I started having nightmares. I'd wake up gasping, seeing Lily in the pool, but now mom was there too, standing and watching. Dad heard me one night and came to sit on my bed. We didn't talk. He just sat there until I fell back asleep. This became our routine for weeks. Emma came back home and we tried to act normal. She was talking more now, calling Dad Dada and me by a shortened version of my name. She was sweet and funny and completely unaware of the darkness we'd uncovered. We kept her routine steady. Parks, playtime, regular meals. Kids need stability. We pushed our fears aside during the day, focusing on her needs. Then one afternoon, afternoon, the doorbell rang. I was helping Emma with a puzzle, one with cartoon animals that she loved. Dad answered it. I heard Mom's voice and my blood ran cold. She was back. She stood in the doorway looking different, thinner. Her hair was shorter and darker. She wore a simple sweater and jeans instead of her usual put-together outfits. She said she'd been getting help and wanted to talk. Dad hesitated but let her in. I picked up Emma and took her upstairs, telling her we'd play in her room. She didn't need to see this. From the top of the stairs, I could hear them talking. Mom's voice was calm, measured. Nothing like the screaming woman from months ago. She talked about therapy and medication and understanding her grief better. She said she knew she'd been wrong. Dad mostly listened. I crept halfway down the stairs to hear better. She wanted to see Emma. Just a short visit, she said. Supervised, of course. She understood she had no rights anymore, but hoped we could work something out. Dad told her he'd need to think about it. She accepted that without argument. That should have been my first warning. Mom never accepted anything without a fight. After she left, Dad and I talked. He seemed conflicted. Maybe she really had gotten help. Maybe people could change. I reminded him about the insurance policies. He said we didn't know what those meant for sure. We went in circles for hours. Emma played with her blocks nearby, occasionally showing us her creations. Mom started texting Dad daily, simple messages at first, asking how Emma was doing, sharing what she'd learned in therapy, apologizing for specific things she'd done. The messages seemed genuine. Dad showed them to me, asking what I thought. I didn't trust it, but couldn't explain why. Just a feeling in my gut. After 2 weeks of texts, Dad agreed to meet her for coffee, just the two of them. He came back looking thoughtful. She'd shown him paperwork from her therapist, proof of regular sessions. She was on medication for depression and anxiety. She seemed to really understand how badly she'd messed up. He was starting to soften. I stayed suspicious. Something felt off about the whole thing. The timing was too convenient. We'd just found those insurance papers and suddenly she appeared. All better? I started paying closer attention to everything. When she came by to drop off some of Emma's old toys she'd kept, I watched from my window. She sat in her car for 10 minutes after leaving, just staring at our house. Dad agreed to a supervised visit. We met at a park, public and safe. Emma didn't remember her at first. Mom handled it well, not pushing, just sitting nearby and talking softly. She'd brought Bubbles. Emma loved Bubbles. Within an hour, they were playing together. Dad watched closely, but I could see him relaxing. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being played. The visits became weekly, always supervised, always in public. Mom never asked for more. She followed every boundary we set. She brought age-appropriate toys and healthy snacks. She read Emma stories and pushed her on swings. To anyone watching, she looked like a caring mother who'd made mistakes and was trying to do better. But I noticed things, little things. She'd ask Emma questions about our routines. What time did she nap? What did she eat for breakfast? Did she sleep through the night? When I mentioned this to Dad, he said she was just trying to be involved, making conversation. But the questions felt too specific, too focused. One day, Mom mentioned she'd gotten a job at a daycare. Working with kids again felt healing, she said. She was living in a small apartment across town, rebuilding her life slowly. Dad seemed impressed by her progress. I felt sick. Why would someone who'd lost custody of a child be allowed to work at a daycare? I looked up the daycare online. It existed. The website showed smiling kids and colorful classrooms. But when I called pretending to be interested in enrollment, they'd never heard of my mother. I told Dad immediately. He confronted her at the next visit. She laughed it off. She'd gotten the name wrong. It was actually a different daycare. She showed him a pay stub. The unease in my stomach grew. Mom started suggesting longer visits. Maybe Emma could come to her apartment for a few hours. Dad said no. She accepted it gracefully, but brought it up again the next week and the next. Gentle pressure. Nothing aggressive, just planting seeds. I watched Dad start to consider it. After all, she'd been doing so well. I decided to follow her one day. I know that sounds crazy, but I needed to know where she really lived. I borrowed my friend's bike and stayed far behind her car. She didn't go to the apartment complex she'd described. She went to a motel on the outskirts of town, the kind that rented by the week. I took pictures with my phone and showed Dad that night. He confronted her again. Another easy explanation. She was between apartments. The motel was temporary. She hadn't wanted to seem unstable, so she'd lied about having a real place. She cried about being embarrassed by her situation. Dad bought it. I didn't. The lies were piling up, but each one seemed so reasonable on its own. Emma started having nightmares after the visits. Nothing major, just waking up crying occasionally. Mom suggested it might be because the visits were too short. Emma was getting attached, then having to say goodbye. Maybe longer visits would help? The logic was twisted, but almost made sense. Dad started wavering. I began recording our conversations with Mom on my phone. Not video, just audio. I kept it in my pocket during visits. Most of it was boring, normal talk, but sometimes she'd say things that felt wrong. Comments about how Emma would be happier with more stability, how split custody was so hard on kids, how maybe we should think about what was really best for Emma. One recording caught her on the phone when she thought we couldn't hear. She was talking about timeline and patience and how everything was going according to plan. When I played it for Dad, he said she was probably talking about her therapy goals. I wanted to scream. How could he not see what was happening? The visits continued. Mom brought up overnight visits again. Just one night, she suggested. Emma could see her apartment, have a sleepover. Dad was actually considering it. I begged him not to. We argued about it constantly. He thought I was being paranoid, letting my anger cloud my judgment. Maybe I was, but maybe I wasn't. Then Mom made a mistake. During a visit, Emma fell and scraped her knee. Nothing serious, just a little blood. Mom completely overreacted. She scooped Emma up and started heading for her car, saying she needed to go to the hospital. Dad had to physically block her. She snapped at him that he was endangering Emma by not taking it seriously. The mask slipped for just a moment. Dad saw it too. After that, he started listening to my concerns more. We went back through the recordings together. The patterns became clearer. The questions about routines. The gradual push for more access. The small lies that didn't seem connected until you looked at them all together. Dad's lawyer friend listened to everything and suggested we document it all carefully. Mom noticed the change immediately. She accused Dad of poisoning me against her. Said he was being influenced by a traumatized teenager who couldn't forgive. She threatened to get her own lawyer, to fight for grandparent rights or something. The calm, therapy-improved version of her started cracking. We kept the visits going but stayed more alert. I made sure to never leave Emma alone with her, not even for a second. Dad did the same. Mom noticed that too. She made comments about how we were treating her like a criminal, how unfair it was, how she'd done everything we asked. One day she showed up at our house unannounced, said she was just dropping off a birthday present for Emma even though Emma's birthday was months away. Dad told her she couldn't do that. She needed to stick to the scheduled visits. She cried on our porch about missing her family. Several neighbors saw. I'm sure that was intentional. The next visit, visit, she brought my aunt with her. My aunt who'd taken Emma in before. Mom had been working on her, telling her how well therapy was going. My aunt started advocating for Mom, saying everyone deserved a second chance. The family pressure was beginning. Mom was playing a longer game than we'd realized. More relatives started reaching out. Mom had been contacting them, sharing her progress, asking for support. Some believed her. They called Dad, suggesting he was being too harsh, that Mom had suffered enough, that Emma needed her mother. The divide in the family was growing. Mom was good at this. I found out she'd been going to Lily's grave, leaving flowers and toys, taking pictures. She posted them on Facebook with captions about healing and forgiveness. People who didn't know the whole story commented with hearts and support. She was building a narrative, the grieving mother who'd lost her way but found it again. Dad started getting stressed. The pressure from family, the constant vigilance during visits, the fear of making the wrong choice. He wasn't sleeping well. Neither was I. Emma seemed okay but clingy. She followed us from room to room, not wanting to be alone. Maybe she sensed the tension. Mom requested a meeting with just Dad. No Emma, just to talk about co-parenting. Dad agreed but met her in a public restaurant. I sat in the car in the parking lot, ready to call 911 if needed. Paranoid? Maybe. But I couldn't shake the fear that she was planning something. They talked for 2 hours. Dad came out looking shaken. Mom had been reasonable, he said, talking about Emma's future, college funds, shared responsibilities, but she'd also mentioned the life insurance policies, said she'd forgotten about them, that they were from before Lily when she was worried about providing for the kids if something happened to her. The explanation was plausible. Too plausible. That night we talked about going to the police, but what would we say? That Mom took out life insurance and our sister died in an accident? That she was being too nice now? We had suspicions but no proof. The recordings showed manipulation, but nothing illegal. We were stuck. Mom kept pushing boundaries in small ways, showing up 5 minutes early for visits, staying 5 minutes late, buying Emma clothes that looked exactly like ones Lily had worn, calling Emma by pet names that had been Lily's. Each thing was small enough to seem coincidental, but together they felt deliberate. I started researching on my own, looking up similar cases, trying to understand what we were dealing with. I found stories about people who'd lost custody fighting to get their kids back. The tactics were familiar. Building support networks, documenting improvement, gradually increasing contact. Some succeeded. That terrified me. Emma had been making friends at a local playgroup. One day Mom showed up there, said she'd heard about it and wanted to see Emma playing with other kids. The playgroup leader didn't know our situation and let her stay. When we found out, we had to explain everything. It was humiliating and exhausting. Mom apologized, said she just wanted to see Emma happy. Dad hired a private investigator. I didn't even know that was a real job outside of movies. The guy was nothing like TV, just a normal-looking man with a boring car. He started following Mom, checking her background, verifying her claims. It cost money we didn't really have, but Dad said it was necessary. The investigator found interesting things. Mom's therapist was real, but she'd only been going for 6 weeks, not the month she'd claimed. The daycare job was real, but she'd been fired after 3 weeks for being too intense with the children. The apartment she'd finally shown us, she was behind on rent. The story she'd built was full of holes. We documented everything the investigator found. Dad's lawyer friend said it was good, but might not be enough. Family court was tricky. Mom hadn't done anything clearly dangerous. Being an imperfect person wasn't illegal. We needed more if we wanted to protect Emma permanently. Then Mom escalated. She filed papers with the court requesting formal visitation rights, said we were being unreasonable and denying Emma a relationship with her mother. The papers made us sound like the bad guys. Dad scrambled to find a real family lawyer. The retainer alone was thousands of dollars we didn't have. The lawyer reviewed everything. The insurance policies were concerning, but not proof of anything. The lies were troubling, but not necessarily disqualifying. The manipulation was clear to us, but might not be to a judge. We were told to keep documenting everything and hope Mom made a bigger mistake. Family members started taking sides. Some supported us, having seen Mom's behavior firsthand. Others thought we were being cruel, keeping a mother from her child. Family dinners became battlegrounds. Emma picked up on the tension, becoming fussier and more anxious. We tried to shield her, but kids sense everything. Mom's visits became performances. She was the perfect mother for those 2 hours every week. Engaged, patient, loving. Anyone watching would think we were monsters for limiting her access. She probably knew we were recording now and was careful with her words, but sometimes I'd catch her looking at Emma with an expression I couldn't read. One visit, she brought up Lily again. Told Emma she had a sister in heaven who loved her very much. Dad shut it down immediately, but the damage was done. Emma started asking about her heaven sister. We'd planned to tell her about Lily when she was older, in an age-appropriate way. Mom had forced our hand. The court date approached. Our lawyer prepared us for different outcomes. Best case, the judge would see through Mom and deny her request. Worst case, she'd get unsupervised visitation, or even partial custody. The middle ground was continuing supervised visits indefinitely. None of the options felt safe enough. Mom's lawyer painted her as a reformed woman who'd addressed her mental health and just wanted to be part of her daughter's life. Our lawyer presented the pattern of lies and manipulation. The judge seemed skeptical of both sides, said the child's best interests were all that mattered. Scheduled another hearing for 2 months later. Those 2 months were tense. Mom's behavior during visits was perfect. Too perfect. She never complained, never pushed boundaries, never did anything we could document as concerning. It felt like the calm before a storm. Dad and I took turns staying up at night, irrationally afraid she'd try something. The investigator kept digging. Found out Mom had been in contact with another family who'd lost custody of their child. Swapping strategies, maybe? We couldn't prove it. Found out she'd been researching Emma's daycare schedule. Said it was just interest in her daughter's life. Everything had an innocent explanation. Then we got lucky, or unlucky, depending on how you look at it. Mom slipped during a recorded visit. Started talking about how much better Emma's life would be with her. How she had plans for Emma's future. How she'd already looked at private schools near her apartment. When Dad reminded her she didn't have custody, she snapped. Just for a second. Said we'd see who Emma belonged with soon enough. It wasn't much, but it was something. Our lawyer added it to the file. The second hearing approached. Mom doubled down on being perfect. Brought character references from her therapist, her landlord, even the daycare that had fired her. They all said nice things. We wondered what she'd threatened or promised them. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking on Emma, making sure her window was locked, her nightlight on. Dad was doing the same thing. We met in the hallway at 3 a.m. and just stood there, both thinking the same fears, both hoping we were wrong about everything. The hearing was in a small room that smelled like old coffee. The judge reviewed all the evidence, asked questions about Emma's well-being, watched a video of one of the visits where mom seemed engaged and appropriate. Our lawyer presented the pattern of deception. Mom's lawyer called it paranoid speculation. I was allowed to speak. I told the judge about the insurance policies, about mom calling Lily broken, about how she'd erased my sister and tried to replace her. Mom's lawyer objected repeatedly, said I was a traumatized child lashing out. The judge let me continue, but I could see the skepticism. Mom spoke too, cried about her mistakes, said grief had broken her but she'd put herself back together, talked about how much she loved Emma and just wanted to be part of her life. She was convincing. Even I almost believed her. The judge took it all in, said she'd review everything and make a decision within a week. That week was agony. We went through the motions of normal life. Emma went to playgroup, I went to school, Dad went to work, but we were all waiting, jumping every time the phone rang, checking the mail obsessively. The tension was suffocating. The decision came on a Thursday. The judge granted mom expanded supervised visitation, 4 hours every Saturday instead of 2. The supervision could be reevaluated in 6 months. It wasn't the worst outcome, but it wasn't good either. More time meant more opportunities for mom to manipulate Emma or plan something worse. We started the new schedule that weekend. 4 hours felt endless. Mom took full advantage, planning elaborate activities. The zoo one week, a pottery class the next. Emma loved it. Started asking about mom during the week, wanting to call her. The attachment mom wanted was forming. I kept recording everything. Hours of boring conversation punctuated by moments that made my skin crawl. Mom teaching Emma to keep secrets from us. Small ones at first. An extra cookie. A toy she wasn't supposed to have. Building to bigger things. I played the recordings for Dad. He heard it too. But what could we do? Mom started giving Emma gifts to bring home. Stuffed animals, books, clothes, each one carefully chosen. The clothes were always slightly too similar to things Lily had worn. The books were ones Lily had loved. The stuffed animals were types Lily had collected. Emma didn't know. She just loved the presents. One Saturday, Mom was late returning Emma. Only by 15 minutes, but it sent us into a panic. She apologized, said traffic was bad, but Emma let slip they'd been to Mom's apartment, the one place she wasn't supposed to take her. When confronted, Mom said Emma was confused. They'd driven past it but hadn't gone in. Emma was too young to be a reliable witness. The investigator had been watching that day. Confirmed they'd gone inside for 20 minutes. We reported it to our lawyer. Mom got a warning from the court, but nothing more. She cried to the supervisor about misunderstanding the rules. Promised it wouldn't happen again. The supervisor believed her. I started noticing Emma acting different after visits. Quieter, more withdrawn. She'd always been a happy kid, but now she seemed worried. Started asking if she was being good enough, if we still wanted her. Mom was planting something in her head during those visits, something we couldn't quite catch on the recordings. Dad tried talking to Emma about the visits, asked if Mom said anything that upset her. Emma wouldn't answer, just shook her head and changed the subject. Kids that young don't have words for manipulation. They just feel the confusion and pressure. We were losing her bit by bit and couldn't stop it. Mom requested holiday visitation, wanted Emma for part of Christmas. The audacity made me furious. This would be our first real Christmas as a family since everything happened, but her lawyer argued she had rights too. The court agreed to 2 hours on Christmas Eve. Another victory for Mom. The 6-month review approached. Mom had been following the rules mostly. The apartment incident was considered minor. Her lawyer pushed for unsupervised visitation, overnight visits, maybe even shared custody eventually. Our lawyer fought back, but I could see the judge considering it. Mom's performance had been nearly flawless. Then everything changed. Mom made a real mistake. During a visit, she took Emma to get her ears pierced. Came back with Emma crying, ears red and swollen, said Emma had begged for it. The supervisor had been in the bathroom when it happened. Dad was furious. You need parental consent for piercings. Mom didn't have that right. We rushed Emma to the doctor. The piercings were badly done, already infected. They had to come out. Emma screamed through the whole process. Mom tried to apologize, said she just wanted to do something special for Emma, but the damage was done. The judge finally saw what we'd been trying to show all along. The review hearing was different this time. The judge was angry about the piercing incident, called it a serious breach of trust and boundaries. Mom tried to explain but made it worse, said she felt like Emma's real mother and had acted on instinct. The judge reminded her she'd lost that right when she abandoned Emma. Visits were reduced back to 2 hours and moved to a supervised facility. No more fun outings, just a sterile room with toys and a social worker watching. Mom was furious but tried to hide it. Her mask was cracking more often now. The perfect mother act was harder to maintain under stricter supervision. Emma was confused by the changes, asked why she couldn't go to the zoo with Mom anymore. We explained as simply as we could that Mom needed to follow rules to keep everyone safe. She didn't really understand but accepted it. Kids are adaptable. She started relaxing again, the anxiety fading. Mom's family pressure campaign intensified. Now we were the villains who'd taken away her privileges over a simple mistake. The calls and messages increased. Some relatives threatened to cut us off entirely. Others said we were damaging Emma by limiting her relationship with her mother. The family split deepened, but something good came from it. My aunt who'd originally taken Emma in came to visit. She'd been watching everything unfold and had concerns. Told us Mom had been texting her constantly, trying to get information about our routines, asking if she'd testify that we were unfit parents. My aunt had refused and Mom had turned nasty. We added my aunt's testimony to our file. More evidence of Mom's manipulation. Her network of support was starting to see through her act. One by one, family members who'd supported her began reaching out with their own stories of her lies and pressure tactics. The truth was finally surfacing. Mom sensed she was losing ground. The visits became tense. She'd make passive-aggressive comments just quiet enough that the supervisor couldn't hear clearly. Told Emma that some people didn't want them to be together, that Emma should remember who really loved her. The manipulation was more desperate now, less subtle. I turned 18 during all this. Legally an adult, though I didn't feel like one. But it meant I could petition for guardianship of Emma if something happened to Dad. We filed the paperwork just in case. Mom found out and accused us of planning to cut her out entirely. She wasn't wrong, but we couldn't admit that. The investigator uncovered something new. Mom had been in contact with a lawyer known for aggressive custody battles, the kind who use dirty tactics, private investigators of their own, digging up dirt on opposing parents. We worried about what they might find or fabricate. Dad had a couple speeding tickets. I'd gotten detention once in middle school. Would they try to use that? We decided to be proactive, met with our lawyer to discuss any potential vulnerabilities, prepared explanations for anything Mom's team might twist. It felt paranoid but necessary. The stakes were too high to be caught off guard. Emma's safety depended on us being ready for anything. Mom's behavior in the supervised visits deteriorated. She'd cry through entire visits, telling Emma Emma how much she missed her. The supervisor warned her about emotional manipulation, but she'd pull herself together just enough to avoid losing visits entirely. Emma started dreading Saturdays, clinging to us when it was time to go. Then we found out Mom had been telling people Dad was abusive. Nothing specific enough to report to authorities, but enough to plant seeds of doubt. Said that's why she'd had to leave, to protect herself. Some people believed her. We started getting suspicious looks at school events, whispers at the grocery store. Dad was devastated. He'd never raised a hand to anyone in his life. The accusation ate at him. He started second-guessing every interaction with Emma, afraid someone would misinterpret normal parenting as something sinister. I watched him pull back from hugging her in public, terrified of perception. Our lawyer said this was a common tactic in ugly custody battles. Throw enough mud and some sticks. We documented everything, prepared character witnesses, but the damage to Dad's reputation was real. Some people would always wonder if there was truth to Mom's claims. It made me hate her even more. The stress was affecting all of us. Emma had started wetting the bed again. Dad was losing weight, barely eating. I was failing a class for the first time in my life. Couldn't concentrate on anything but protecting our family. We were surviving, but at a cost. Mom was winning even while losing. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday, around midnight. I woke up to a sound downstairs. Thought maybe Dad was getting water, but something felt wrong. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. Someone was trying to open the back door, the one with the broken lock we'd been meaning to fix. I ran to Dad's room, shook him awake. We both heard it then. The door opening, footsteps in the kitchen. Dad grabbed the baseball bat he kept by his bed, told me to get Emma and lock ourselves in the bathroom. Call 911, but I couldn't move, frozen by fear and the need to know who was in our house. Dad crept downstairs while I stood guard by Emma's door. I heard him shout, then a crash. Mom's voice, high and frantic, saying she just wanted to see Emma, that we'd kept her baby from her, that she had every right to be there. Dad telling her to leave, that he'd called the police. More crashing. I finally moved, running to Emma's room. She was sitting up in bed, eyes wide with fear. "What's happening?" she whispered. I scooped her up, feeling her small body trembling against mine. Carried her to the bathroom and locked the door. Called 911 with shaking hands. Told them someone had broken in, that my dad was in danger. They said units were on the way. Stay on the line. I could hear the struggle downstairs. The police arrived within minutes, though it felt like hours. I heard them enter, shout commands. Mom screaming that this was her house, her family, that we'd stolen everything from her. The sound of handcuffs clicking. Dad's voice, steady but shaken, explaining what happened. I stayed in the bathroom until an officer knocked, said it was safe. Mom was in the back of a police car when we came down. Emma clung to me, burying her face in my shoulder. The kitchen was a mess. Broken dishes, a chair overturned. Dad had a cut on his forehead where Mom had thrown something. The officers took statements, photographs, evidence. She'd come in through the back door with a key she'd kept. Planned to take Emma and disappear. Had a bag packed in her car with Emma's clothes, toys, and cash. The officers found paperwork for a rental car and a motel reservation 3 states away. She'd been planning this for weeks while playing the perfect mother at supervised visits. Dad and I sat in the living room until dawn, Emma sleeping between us. We didn't talk much, just held each other and tried to process what had happened. The house felt violated. Every shadow could be her returning. We'd known she was dangerous, but this was beyond what we'd imagined. Mom was charged with breaking and entering, attempted kidnapping, and assault. Her lawyer tried to spin it as a mental health crisis brought on by being kept from her child, but the planning showed clear intent. The judge who'd been sympathetic before now saw what we'd been trying to tell everyone. Mom was dangerous. An emergency hearing stripped all her visitation rights. A restraining order was issued. She couldn't come within 500 feet of any of us. It should have felt like victory, but it just felt hollow. Emma woke up asking for breakfast like nothing had happened. We tried to keep things normal for her, but how do you explain that Grandma tried to take her away? The family fallout was swift. Those who'd supported Mom were horrified. Apologies poured in from relatives who doubted us, but some still made excuses, said we'd driven her to it by being too restrictive. That grief and desperation made people do terrible things, as if that justified traumatizing a child. We installed new locks, an alarm system, cameras. The expense was crushing but necessary. Dad slept on the couch for weeks, needing to see the doors. I kept Emma's baby monitor in my room, waking at every sound. The house that had been healing became a fortress. Mom had taken that from us too. The criminal case moved slowly. Mom was out on bail, supposedly staying with a friend. The conditions were strict: no contact, ankle monitor, curfew. But we all knew how little that meant to someone desperate. We saw her sometimes, sitting in her car just outside the restraining order distance, watching. The police said they couldn't do anything if she didn't come closer. Emma noticed the changes, asked why we had new locks, why the alarm beeped when doors opened. We told her it was to keep everyone safe, like wearing seatbelts in the car. She accepted it with the trust kids have, but she'd lost some innocence. Started checking that doors were locked, asking if bad people could get in. Mom's trial date was set for 6 months out. Her lawyer was building a defense around temporary insanity, grief-induced psychosis, anything to avoid real consequences. Our lawyer warned us she might get a plea deal, mental health treatment instead of jail time. The system trying to be compassionate to a grieving mother. We focused on healing, therapy for all of us. Emma bounced back fastest, as kids do. Started preschool and made friends. Dad threw himself into work and being the best parent possible. I focused on school, determined not to let Mom derail my future. We were building something good despite her shadow. Then the investigator found something that changed everything. While reviewing Mom's finances for the criminal case, he discovered another insurance policy, one on Emma, taken out just weeks before she tried to take her, for $1 million. The pattern was undeniable now. Lily hadn't been an accident. Emma had been next. We took everything to the police. The insurance policies, the pattern, the escalation. They reopened Lily's case. Started interviewing everyone who'd been there that day, looking for inconsistencies in Mom's story, the pool maintenance records, security footage from neighbors, building a case we'd always suspected but couldn't prove. The trial date kept getting pushed back. Mom's new lawyer kept filing motions for delays, mental health evaluations, competency hearings, whatever they could think of. Each delay meant more months of looking over our shoulders. Emma started kindergarten with a safety plan in place. The school had Mom's photo and strict pickup rules. Then one morning, Dad got a call from the prosecutor. Mom had made bail somehow. Some distant relative we'd never heard of put up their house as collateral. She was out with an ankle monitor and strict conditions, but she was out. We immediately filed for an emergency restraining order extension. The judge granted it, but we all knew how useless paper was against someone determined. We didn't see her at first. The ankle monitor reports showed her staying at her bail bail sponsor's house across town, following curfew, checking in as required. Maybe prison had scared her straight. Dad and I wanted to believe it, but we kept our guard up, varied our routines more, installed extra cameras, stayed vigilant. Emma's school had a Halloween parade. Parents could come watch the kids march around in costumes. Emma was going as a butterfly, wings she'd helped make herself. I took the morning off from college to attend with Dad. We stood with the other parents taking pictures, trying to feel normal. Then I saw her. Mom was across the street just outside school property, wearing sunglasses and a hat, but definitely her. She was taking pictures with a long lens camera. I grabbed Dad's arm, pointed her out. He immediately moved toward her while I called 911, but she saw us notice her and walked quickly away. By the time police arrived, she was gone. The ankle monitor showed she'd never left her approved address. The prosecutor said she must have cut it off and someone else was wearing it. They arrested her bail sponsor for aiding a fugitive, put out a warrant for Mom, but she'd planned this carefully. Had money hidden somewhere, probably a car we didn't know about. She was in the wind again. We pulled Emma from school immediately. Couldn't risk her being exposed like that. I moved back home from college to help with homeschooling. Dad worked from home when possible. We basically went into lockdown. Emma didn't understand why she couldn't see her friends. Started having tantrums, acting out. The isolation was hurting her, but what choice did we have? 2 weeks later, the police got a tip. Someone matching Mom's description had been seen at a motel one town over. They surrounded the room, went in carefully, found evidence she'd been there, but she was already gone. She'd been using stolen credit cards, fake IDs. The police said she was getting desperate, making mistakes. They'd catch her soon. I started sleeping in Emma's room, put a lock on the inside of her door. Dad slept downstairs on the couch most nights. We were exhausted, running on adrenaline and fear. Emma wet the bed almost nightly, started sucking her thumb again, a habit she'd outgrown years ago. We were all regressing under the stress. Then Mom made contact, not directly but through Emma's old daycare. Called pretending to be from the school district, asking about Emma's records. The daycare director recognized her voice, called us immediately. Mom had been fishing for information about where Emma was now. The daycare hadn't given her anything, but it showed she was still hunting. We hired private security. Couldn't afford it, but couldn't afford not to. A retired cop who sat outside our house in shifts. Made us feel slightly safer, but also like prisoners. Emma asked why the man was always in the car outside. We told her he was a friend making sure we were okay. She was too young to understand the real danger. One night, the security guard called Dad's cell. Someone was creeping around the backyard. Dad called 911 while I got Emma and locked us in the bathroom again, becoming a horrible routine. The guard confronted the person who ran. Police found footprints, a crowbar dropped by the fence. Couldn't prove it was Mom, but who else would it be? The prosecutor was furious about the bail situation, pushed hard for faster trial dates, better resources to find Mom, but the system moved slowly. We were just one case among hundreds, a family court dispute gone bad, not a priority like unaliving or terrorism. We felt abandoned by the very system meant to protect us. Dad's health started suffering, chest pains that sent us to the ER twice. Stress, the doctor said. He was prescribed anxiety medication, told to try to relax. How could he relax when his ex-wife was stalking his family? When his daughter couldn't have a normal childhood? When every noise might be her trying to break in? I found myself checking Emma constantly, making sure she was breathing while she slept, checking her backpack for tracking devices, examining every toy for hidden cameras. Paranoid behaviors that I knew were crazy but couldn't stop. Mom had turned us into nervous wrecks without even being present. The psychological warfare was working. Then we got lucky. Mom tried to access her old bank account from a library computer. The bank flagged it, called the police. By the time they arrived, she was gone, but they had security footage. She looked terrible. Thin, hair matted, clothes dirty. Living on the run was taking its toll. Good, I thought. Let her suffer. The footage gave police a direction to search. They found her car abandoned in a parking garage. Inside were maps with our house circled, Emma's school schedule from before we pulled her out, photos of all of us taken from a distance, detailed notes about our routines. She'd been watching us for weeks before we'd noticed. The violation made me physically sick. We moved to a hotel for a few days while police processed our house as a crime scene, looking for any signs she'd been inside without us knowing. They found nothing, but the not knowing was worse. Emma thought it was an adventure at first. Hotel pool, room service, but she quickly missed her toys, her room, her normal life. The police set up surveillance at places they thought Mom might go. Her mother's grave, Lily's grave, the house where she grew up, nothing for days. Then a groundskeeper at the cemetery reported someone sleeping in a maintenance shed. Police surrounded it at dawn, found Mom inside, delirious from hunger and exhaustion. She fought them, screaming about her babies, how we'd stolen them. It took 3 officers to restrain her. They brought her to the hospital first. Dehydration, malnutrition, infected cuts on her feet from walking. She looked nothing like the put-together woman who'd first returned asking for visits. The monster was finally showing on the outside. This time they put her in maximum security. No bail, no phone privileges, no visitors except her lawyer. We could finally breathe a little. Emma went back to school with a modified schedule. We kept the security for a while longer just in case. Slowly tried to return to something like normal life, whatever that meant anymore. The trial was expedited given her flight risk. We had to testify again. Emma was interviewed by child psychologists in a special room. They asked her about Mom in gentle ways. She didn't remember much, thankfully. Just said Mom made her feel scared sometimes, that she liked living with Daddy and me, that she missed her friends when she couldn't go to school. Mom's lawyer tried arguing she'd been driven insane by grief and our cruelty, that keeping her from Emma had broken her mind. The prosecutor countered with the insurance policies, the planning, the stalking, showed the jury the photos from her car, the notes about our schedules, made it clear this wasn't grief but calculated predation. Mom testified on her own behalf against her lawyer's advice, rambled about conspiracies, claimed we'd unalived Lily and framed her, said Emma was being abused and she was trying to save her. Even her own lawyer looked uncomfortable. The jury saw a dangerous, delusional woman who would never stop coming for Emma, exactly what she was. The verdict took less than a day. Guilty on all counts. The judge gave the maximum sentence. Life without parole for Lily's unaliving. Consecutive sentences for everything else. Mom laughed when they read it, said we'd be sorry, that she'd get out somehow and take back what was hers. They dragged her away, still making threats. We sat in the courthouse parking lot afterwards. Dad turned off his phone. I turned off mine. We just sat in silence for a while. It was over. Really, truly over this time. No appeals would overturn that sentence. No relative would bail her out. She would die in prison. Emma was finally safe. We were all finally safe. The next few months were about rebuilding. Therapy for all of us. Emma had playthings therapy to process the trauma in kid-appropriate ways. Dad and I had individual and family sessions, learning to not jump at shadows, to trust that doors would stay locked, that strangers were usually just strangers. It was harder than it sounds. Emma bounced back fastest. Kids are resilient when they feel secure. She made friends at school, joined a soccer team, had sleepovers, normal kid stuff we'd thought she might never have. She still had nightmares sometimes, but less and less. Started talking about when she grew up instead of being scared of tomorrow. Dad met someone at a grief support group, a widow with kids of her own. They took it slow, both carrying baggage, but it was nice seeing him smile again, have someone to talk to who understood loss and single parenting. Emma liked her kids, started feeling like maybe we could be a bigger family someday. I went back to college, stayed close to home, came back most weekends, but I needed to build my own life too. Changed my major to social work, wanted to help kids like Emma, families like ours. Professor said trauma could make you bitter or better. I was trying for better. We sold the house eventually. Too many bad memories despite the good ones we'd tried to build. Found a place closer to Dad's girlfriend. 2-story colonial with a big yard, no pool. Emma picked a purple room. We painted it together, made it exactly how she wanted. Her safe space that no one could take away. The anniversary of Lily's death came around again. This time we went to her grave together. No drama, no fear. Just a family remembering someone they loved. Emma left a picture she'd drawn of butterflies. Said Lily probably liked butterflies in heaven. We said yes, she probably did. Let her have that innocent belief. We told Emma more truth as she got older. Age-appropriate pieces. About her birth mom who couldn't take care of her. About Lily who died in an accident. About mom who got sick in her mind and had to go away. Simple explanations that answered her questions without traumatizing her. She'd learn the full truth when she was ready. Years passed. Emma grew into a confident, happy kid. Played soccer like I had. Won science fairs like I had, but also her own person. Artistic like neither Dad nor I were. Brave in ways we'd had to learn. She knew she was adopted, but also knew she was chosen. Wanted, protected, loved beyond measure. Dad married his girlfriend when Emma was 10. Small wedding, just family and close friends. Emma was the flower girl. Took her job very seriously. I gave a speech about second chances and finding happiness after darkness. Cried through half of it. Everyone cried, but happy tears this time. Healing tears. We got a letter from the prison when Emma was 12. Mom had died. Heart attack in her cell. Natural causes. They needed to know what to do with her remains. Dad handled it quietly. Had her cremated, scattered somewhere we'd never know. No grave for Emma to feel obligated to visit. No marker for our past pain. Just ashes and ending. We told Emma that night. She took it quietly. Asked a few questions. Wanted to know if Mom had been alone. We said yes. She said that was sad. We agreed. Even monsters deserve some compassion in death. But then she asked what was for dessert, and the moment passed. She'd never really known Mom. The news meant little to her life. I finished my social work degree. Started working with kids in the system. Some had stories worse than Emma's. Some had no one fighting for them like we'd fought for her. I did my best to be their advocate. To spot the red flags others might miss. To believe kids when they said something felt wrong. Lily and Emma made me better at it. Dad retired early. The stress had aged him, but he was happy now. Spent time woodworking, teaching Emma to build things. They made a dollhouse together. Every detail perfect. She still has it, even as a teenager. Says she'll give it to her kids someday. The continuity of that makes me smile. Normal family planning. What we'd fought so hard to achieve. Emma knows the whole truth now. Read the court documents when she turned 16. Had questions we answered honestly. Was angry we'd kept some details back, but understood we'd been protecting her. She's in therapy working through it. Says she wants to be a lawyer. Help kids like her younger self. The cycle of helping continues. We still visit Lily's grave. All of us now. Dad's wife and her kids too. A blended family remembering someone they never met, but who shaped their lives. Emma tells Lily about high school. Boys she likes, dreams for college, normal teenage stuff. The conversations Lily never got to have. It's sad, but also healing. Keeping her memory alive the right way. Sometimes I dream about different endings. Where Mom got help before it was too late. Where Lily lived. Where Emma didn't need protecting. But you can't change the past. Can only build from where you are. We built something good from tragedy. A family forged in fire, but strengthened by love. That's our victory. Emma graduates next year. Wants to study pre-law at State University. Close enough to come home, but far enough to be independent. We're proud and terrified in equal measure. But that's normal parenting. Being scared and letting them fly anyway. She's strong enough. We made sure of that. Lily would be proud too. The house is quieter now with Emma mostly grown. Dad and his wife travel some. I have my own apartment, my own life. But we gather every Sunday for dinner. Tell stories, share news, just be together. Normal family stuff that once seemed impossible. We made it through the darkness, found light on the other side. That's enough. That's everything.